How's it going, guys? Cody, we're back again. We're dropping yet another video. Right, guys, it's like 20 to 4 now, Wednesday morning. Wasn't planning on doing a video. I feel like shit, but I decided I want to do one. So this video, as you can see from the title, is about corresponding with serial killers. Now, for anyone that doesn't know, I was raised with a sort of morbid interest in serial killers. I had a very bad childhood, subject to extreme violence, locked in my room, beaten, starved, had to urinate and defecate in a bucket, very much the black sheep of the family. I was bullied relentlessly at school. It goes down like that. But when I was classed as being good and I was allowed out of my room, I used to partake in watching serial killer documentaries. And this is from a young age. I was pretty much obsessed with serial killers. And I used to partake in watching documentaries, right? I just fascinated by them. We used to have there used to be a VHS tape, and it was called Executions as well. And it was real life executions, right? It was a banned video because of all the gruesome murders and like executions and stuff like that. And I used to sit there fascinated watching it. And when I used to watch these documentaries, I used to watch them for two reasons. One, because I was interested in why people commit these heinous crimes. And two, because I was probably planning and plotting to do my mum and stepdad in. That's me being honest. Obviously, times have changed and I'm very close to my mum now. But yeah, I had this morbid interest in serial killers. At the time, it was mainly British serial killers. Obviously, we was aware of American serial killers, people like Arthur Shawcross, BTK, Bind, Torture, Kill, Ted Bundy, Wayne Gacy, although like the Green River Killer, I think that's Gary Ridgway or something. Yeah, all these sorts of people, right? So we knew about them, right? But I was interested in British serial killers. And one documentary that I used to watch more than others was Ian Brady and Mairead Hindley. For those that don't know, Ian Brady and Mairead Hindley were known as the Moors murderers. I think they killed 6 children. And all the bodies have been repatriated and buried and everything, God bless them, apart from Keith Bennett. Keith Bennett's body, sadly, is still out there somewhere on Saddleworth Moor. His mother, Winnie Johnson, who died of cancer, begged him to reveal the location of her son's body. He never did. Anyway, so when I was in Strangeways on remand, I went to the library. I'm not a reader, right? The last book I probably read was like Biff and Chip in fucking primary school. But I really, really wanted to break the monotony and the boredom and stuff. I went to the library and I got a true crime book, and one of the books was about serial killers. One of the cases that was featured was Ian Brady and Mairead Hindley. And I was reading and stuff like that, and I didn't know this, but Brady had actually been on remand at Strangeways. Now, Brady was born in Gorbals, district of Glasgow, which was like the slums. The sheriff sent him down to Manchester. I think his mum had remarried or something down here, or his dad or something, and he moved down here, and he was working at the market and everything, and all this crazy stuff, right? And he committed his crimes whilst he lived up on Hattersley Estate. I think it was number 16. I can't remember the street name off the top of my head. So I've read about him and I'm like, fucking hell, he'd been in this prison and everything. So when I came out of prison, I just thought, I'm going to write to the guy, right? I wrote to several serial killers. I wrote to high profile people. I wrote to serial killers, right? Wasn't really expecting a response. Days turned into weeks, weeks turned into 2 months or so. And then I come back one day, I think it was from court, and there's a hand, because when you send letters to someone in an institution, whether it's prison, young offenders, a psychiatric unit, you always put in a stamped addressed envelope so they can write back. So this day I come through my door and I'm looked through the post, and you've got my handwritten envelope, and at the top it said certificate of posting. So I was like, oh my God, who's this from? And I opened it, and of all the people that I wrote to, the last person I was expecting a reply from was Ian Brady. But yeah, I had a letter from Ian Brady, letter like front and back. It was just a blank piece of A4 paper, and he replied, and I was very surprised because obviously this man's supposed to be very intellectual, very intelligent, ahead of his time, even at his time of death. Some people say that he wasn't intelligent, it was a pseudo-intellectual. But regardless, I had a letter from that depraved serial killer. Now, some people that are clueless or that have got an agenda against me, or people that write to serial killers in general, right? They think, oh, well, you're corresponding with a serial killer. You support their actions. No, not at all. Right? Not at all. Right? My thing was a vested interest and an intrigue. I was like, looking at it now, I was probably an uneducated, thick, like forensic psychology student, in the sense of I wanted to know why he committed his crimes and the patterns of behaviour and why he came to commit these heinous crimes that have gone down in history for all the wrong reasons. Again, God bless the victims and stuff. Obviously, all the victims, bar Keith Bennett, bodies were found and they was then buried and everything. Keith's body, God bless him, is still out there up on Saddleworth Moor. Brady took it to his grave. Did Brady know where his body was? I honestly don't think so. But yeah, so I started to correspond with Brady, and it was like, it wasn't as straightforward. Like, I can talk for England, as you guys know, but when it came to writing to this guy that's supposed to be intelligent, I was really very conscious, that I had to keep him interested. I had to keep the conversation flowing. So I used what I knew. I used Manchester. I used my criminality, my connections. And I would mention my connections to Brady in letters, and he used to write back and he'd acknowledge, yes, I know this person, I know that person, I've heard of that person, I've watched a documentary on that person. Then we go on to talk about like everything from slagging the police off and slagging the institutions off, to government, to politicians, to Hitler, Mein Kampf, which is a book that he was very interested in, to the modern day, to Scotland. I sent him a book about the Gorbals. The Gorbals, for those that don't know, was where Brady was born, which was like the slum district of Glasgow. And I got a book going back to his childhood around the same era, and I sent it to him from Amazon. It cost me about 16 quid, because I was trying to win him over, you understand? And how my brain worked was like, everyone that's going to be writing to him is going to have an agenda. They're going to be like journalists or psychologists or criminologists or doctors of psychology, criminology, things like that, forensic psychology and such. So I used my criminal angle because I thought he's going to be more inclined to trust a criminal than he is a journal or an academic. You'll see it a mile off. And I used that agenda. I used that angle. I used to send him pictures of myself and some of the gangland boys, and it started. Then he set me like little challenges, right? And it sounds silly, but I saw it as a challenge. So he said to me, he said, I really need some closed triangle envelopes. Now on the back of the envelope, right? These envelopes these days, they're just at the end. You open it, you peel it, and you seal it. Right, he wanted closed triangles, so you'd lick it down in a triangle shape and it'd seal on the back. Right, he was very specific. I couldn't find these envelopes anywhere. W.H. Smith's, like Paper Chase. No, I couldn't find them anywhere. I ended up finding them in Oswaldtwistle, in a mill. I think it's Boundary, not Boundary Mill. It was a mill in Oswaldtwistle, in an arts and crafts shop. And I was like, oh my God! So I got 2 lots. I sent them into him. Then he was like, right, can you get me some Schaefer blue medium pen refills? So I got them. I bought him 2 or 3. He said, you didn't have to buy me 2 or 3. 1 would have done. He said, but appreciated. Then he started, I sent him DVDs in. He sent me DVDs back, like films like Inception and things like that, Easy Rider. I sent him, there was the Battle of Stalingrad. I can't remember what, Enemy at the Gate it's called, with Jude Law and somebody else. And I sent that to Brady, and Brady sent me things. Then he did me a mixtape, and the correspondence was back and forth. But I can't. There was an uneasiness. Like when I read that letter, it's like a bit of. You've seen the documentaries and stuff, but you're actually corresponding on a one-to-one basis. with this depraved, sick, fucking paedophilic, child murdering scumbag. And I was trying to get inside his mind's eye. And like I said, I'm stupid and I was naive, but I believed and I tried, and I thought he never gave the location of Keith Bennett's body, right? Did he know where it was? Probably not. Right? Decades had passed. But I literally tried, and I thought, I'm going to befriend this guy. I'm going to do what I need to do. And I'm going to try and worm my way in. Like I said, very gullible. Well, I'm not a gullible person, but it was a very naive thing for me to try. But I tried. I wanted to try. So anyway, me and Brady just went back and forth, back and forth. Like I said, it was very easy to find where he was. I just Googled him and Googled prison. And then it came up, obviously, that he'd been transferred from a prison decades before to a high security hospital, obviously Ashworth. So that's where I wrote to him. And he died there. And like I said, people, narrow-minded people think, oh, well, if you go down my timeline, you'll see, if you type in Cody Lachey, Ian Brady, you'll see me reading letters, some of my letters from Brady. Now, like I said, do not for 1 second mix interest and intrigue with supporting an individual, right? It was a morbid curiosity. And I'd watch the documentaries, but you know what the newspapers are like, they twist things and stuff like that. Obviously, the guy's sick and twisted, and there's no way you can really twist those stories. But you read stories and you know what papers are like. So rather than listening to documentaries and hearsay and like things like that and speculation, just write to the individual. It was as simple as that. So I did. And like I said, we corresponded for a few years. Like I said, it was just one of them things. As he was bedridden, his health was getting worse. I offered him a fake offer to do security at his funeral, which he actually accepted and copied his solicitors in. It wasn't a genuine offer. I didn't do security at his funeral. I started writing to other high-profile serial killers, Dennis Nielsen, who was known as the Kindly Killer, or the Muswell Hill. Was he known as the Muswell Hill Killer? But I know he was definitely known as the Kindly Killer. Dennis Nielsen served as a chef in the military, in the army. He then became a police officer. Then he worked in a job centre. And he was a cannibal. He was a serial killer. He was a gay serial killer. Not that that means anything. And he chopped bodies up and stuff like that in a flat in Muswell Hill. And they flushed like knuckles and stuff like that down the drain, and it blocked the drain. And dino rod came out and found rotting flesh and fingers and knuckle joints and stuff. And yeah, so and then I think there was a head in a pot on the stove, or that might have been Jeffrey Dahmer. I can't remember, but there was a body in the wardrobe and under his bed and all this crazy stuff. And he used to get himself blind drunk and pull the body up and dissect it and everything. And I was just interested again with Dennis Nielsen. I think Dennis Nielsen killed 12 or 13 men over a few year period. I wrote to Peter Sutcliffe, the Yorkshire Ripper. His psychiatrist actually wrote back to me when he was in Broadmoor. He's now in Franklin Prison, but his psychiatrist wrote to me from Broadmoor and said he didn't want to correspond with me. I think with Sutcliffe, I asked too many questions in that first letter, and that's why he knocked it on the head. I should have gone more gently, like I did with Brady, like I did with Nielsen. I also wrote to Mairead Philpott. Mairead Philpott wasn't a serial killer, but her and her husband and this other man that they were sleeping with, this guy called Paul. This Mick Philpott, who was married to Mairead, they was having like love triangle things, well, love squares really. They had an extra man in the house, like in the bed having sex with them, but they also had a female. I think she was called Lisa. This Lisa had enough, and she fled with her kids, right? And it was going through court, and Mick was trying to get access to the children because he'd get more benefits. And what his intention was he made this mad plot with Mairead and this other guy to petrol bomb or to set fire to their own house and make it look like it was Lisa. And this was in the early hours of the court date for the access to the kids, like who had parental responsibility for the kids, was going to be later that day. And they poured petrol through the letterbox, and they said it, and it just gutted the house, and 6 children died. And Mick and Mairead were suspects in, like, they tried to frame this woman that was in this love tryst with Mairead and with Mick. Right, Mick was a very narcissistic psychopath, and he wanted both his women. One was his wife, one was his lover. He had kids to both. And like I said, this Lisa woman, this extra woman, she fled the house, took the kids. It was going through court, it was getting messy. And Mick thought, with Mairead, if we set the house on fire and point the finger at her, we'll get the kids and we'll get the money. 6 children burnt to death and died, sadly and tragically. And the reason that they was caught was the police, like, when they was doing, like, media interviews about this heinous fire, Mick and Mairead were before the media, and Mick was loving the media attention, really loving it. And when 6 of your children had died, you'd be inconsolable. And he was, but no tears. And Mairead was doing the same. And the police started to think, this is something to do with them. So they was, because their house was obviously destroyed, they was put up in a hotel. I think it was a Holiday Inn or Holiday Express or fucking Premier Inn or something. And what the police did, they bugged the room. They bugged the hotel room. And they got a confession between Mick and Mairead talking about what they've said to the police, what they've said to the media. Did you cry? Was it convincing? So yeah, their web of lies came untangled, and then obviously Mick was jailed and she was jailed and this other guy was jailed. There was petrol on the clothes and stuff like that. Forensics linked them to their own fire. They set their own house on fire with their own kids in. Obviously, petrol, anyone, don't have to be an arsonist to know that petrol is an accelerant. And if you put petrol through someone's letterbox and you light it, that house is going to go up within seconds. And that's exactly what happened. And like I said, 6 children sadly and tragically died. So anyway, cut a long story short. So Mairead was in prison. She was at Bronzefield down in Surrey. And I started to write to Mairead Philpott. And again, people might be like, hold it. Some people want to go to the theatre. Some people want to go to watch darts. Some people want to go to watch rugby league. Some people want to go hiking. Some people want to take photographs. I'm interested in serial killers and high-profile prisoners, right? So I wrote to Mairead. Mairead wrote back. Mairead was very lonely. Her family had washed their hands of her. Mairead then said that she was sexually abused by her dad and all this stuff which her dad denied, which the family denied, and everything like that. She had nobody. She was just languishing in prison, working as a cleaner in Bronzefield. And then I start writing to her, and I send her pictures of me. I'm not no oil painting, but she actually really got attached to me, thought I was good looking. And she fell in love with me over letters. She used to ring me from the prison. And it was just very strange. I wouldn't touch her with yours, but she was very, very interested. Now, if you look at the videos, again, go on, anyone that wants to listen to some of these letters, just type into YouTube, Cody Lachey, Mairead Philpott, right? Or just Cody Lachey Philpott, and you'll see the letters, and you'll hear me talking about them and reading them out and showing the camera. A lot of people criticise me for writing to her. They said, "Oh, you're playing on with her heartstrings and stuff like that." Right? This woman saw fit to set her house on fire with her fella, which killed 6 of her kids. Whether it was deliberate or not is irrelevant. 6 children died. Right? Then she's writing to me, telling me that she wants children with me, and I better have a high sex drive and all this stuff. Right? She's going to do this, that, and the other to me. Right? Lucky boy, weren't I? She used to spray like her letters, and they smelled like, well, it's supposed to have been perfume, smelled like cat's piss. And a lot of people said I manipulated her and stuff like that. You can look at it however you want to look at it. I'm not really here to justify myself to why I wrote to these people. I'm just telling you that I wrote to them. yeah, so yeah, with Mairead, she fell in love with me over letters, and then I got bored and I just stopped replying. I also wrote to Angus Sinclair, or Angus Robertson Sinclair. Angus Sinclair is a serial killer by the known. It was known by the acronym of the World's End Killer, because two of his victims were last seen in the World's End pub. I believe it's in Edinburgh. He was a paedophilic rapist, just a serial killer. Yeah, so I wrote to Angus. Angus was serving time at HMP Glenakill. People in Scotland always say, Cody, you can't pronounce it for shit. But Glenakill, I don't know. So he was in Glenakill, up in Scotland, Glenachill, whatever it's called. And I used to correspond with him. He sent me a canteen sheet, and we used to go backwards and forwards with letters. Charlie Bronson as well. Yeah, I just find it interesting, right? Like I said, there's like these serial killers. I've wrote to people like the crossbow killer, Stephen Griffiths, I think he's called. I've wrote to, obviously, like I said, Peter Sutcliffe. Peter Sutcliffe didn't want to engage, which fair enough. If I was a female, if I would have become, like I said, I was a female, I might have got further with him. Ian Huntley, scumbag child murderer. Yeah, just all these high profile people, really. So is it Stephen Wright, the Norfolk lorry driver, the Suffolk Strangler as he was known? I wrote to him. Stephen Griffiths. I've never wrote to Jeremy Bamber. Jeremy Bamber was accused of shooting dead his family and everything, and then he's maintained his innocence. And there was there's a lot of like speculation and appeals and going down the CCRC route and everything. And yeah, so I wrote to him. I've wrote to quite a few people. I'm just interested, right? Like I said, this was before, it wasn't. It was actually after my first prison stretch. That's when I started writing these letters, and it became I used to come home, right, every day or every other day. I'd go out, I'd come home, I'd go out, I'd come home, whatever. And every day or every other day, right, I'd have a letter, right, and you didn't know who it was from. The only time I knew who the letter was from was if on the envelope, because obviously my handwriting, just like, if you've got 10 letters that are sent back in my own handwriting, I know my own handwriting, but I can't tell you which letter it is, unless it said certificate of posting at the top, and then I knew it was from Ian Brady. Ian Brady's letters were very hard to decipher. I trained myself to understand his way of writing. But yeah, people also ask me and say, Cody, how do you find where high-profile prisoners are? Now, like, from every court you go to, well, technically, from every court, so every prison served by a specific court or courts, but that the rule book can go out the window. Say your hospital order is placed upon you, you're not going to go to a prison. You go to a psychiatric hospital. If you go to Manchester Crown Court, you go to Strangeways. But if you are a young offender under the age of 21, you will not go to Strangeways. They do not accept YOs. So it can chop and change, guys. Like I said, obviously, again, if you go to a court and it might be obviously, if you're Cat A'd off, you're not going to go to a Cat B prison. You're going to be Cat A'd or provisional Cat A or double Cat A. Right, so you're going to go to one of 8 prisons: Strangeways, Wakefield, Wooddale, Long Lartin, Whitemore, Franklin, Wakefield, Strangeways, etc., etc. So all you do is you Google the individual's name and then prison, right? I wrote to a prisoner and I Googled, because, right, you're supposed to have their prison number, but if you don't have the prison number, try to get their date of birth. Now, if it's a high profile case, right, there'll be a Wikipedia page, right? If not, just Google the name of the killer or the high profile prisoner and DOB for date of birth, or you Google say it was, I don't know, Ian Huntley. You'd Google Ian Huntley, video link, and then if any stories that were coming up via video link and stuff, it'd say, right, Ian Brady appeared, not Ian Brady, Ian Huntley appeared via video link, and then it'd tell you the name of the prison. But the thing is, the longer that time elapses, chances are they've been shipped from prison to prison, put on the ghost train, going through dispersal, etc., etc. But I've wrote to someone at what I believe was at one prison, and they forwarded my letter on, and the individual wrote back to me, because my letter was sent from the prison, to be fair. Could have just sent the letter straight back and said, not known at this prison. But they actually forwarded it on to the new prison that the individual had been sent to. It was Stephen Port. Again, Stephen Port was another serial killer. It's just completely skipped my mind. Stephen Port, for those that don't know, was known as a grinder killer. He killed 4 men, and he was done for a whole host of offences. His thing was the date rape drug GHB. And it was very much part of his kick. And he killed one lad and he dumped him outside the flat. He met him on the gay dating site Grindr. He met one of them. He gave him too much GHB. I think he'd had sex with him. He dumped him outside the block, rang 999. They started to question him. He put the phone down. They rang him back. He answered. He put the phone down and said, yeah, he's just ill. I've just seen him. He's not well. And he put the phone down. He made out that he didn't know the lad. Obviously, he'd been having sex with him in his property. A second victim, he drugged him and he carried him to a church down in Reading. I believe it was Reading, Barking. And he dumped his body in a churchyard. And then he killed another lad again with the same, a few weeks later, months later, drugged another lad with GHB, had sex with him, all this stuff, dumped his body in the same spot that the second victim was found. But this time, Stephen Port penned a letter proclaiming to be from the third person that was dead, saying that the third person that died had killed the second person, and don't look for anybody else. And it was in his own handwriting. There was forensics on the letter and on his glasses from Stephen Port. The police didn't do any checks or anything. And then Stephen Port went on to kill a fourth man. I've actually was on a serial killer documentary. I think it's down my timeline. There's clips of me on a serial. If you just type in Cody Lachey serial killer, it should come up. And when I was part of this documentary, and I was watching this documentary, and during it, they actually go on to say, Cody, right, because I don't think he did handwriting samples, right, because in the documentary, they said the letters that Stephen Port swapped with Cody Lachey, me, right, actually helped the police convict Stephen Port. I wasn't a grass, I didn't go to court or anything like that, but my letters to him, they wasn't interested in my letters, they was interested in what he was saying to me. I didn't know this, no police spoke to me. The letters they'd take about a week because he was classed as a Cat A prisoner. He was on the non-swing at Belmarsh, and it used to take about a week for a letter to get to him, then it'd come like a week to get back to me, and then I send him another one, and then it'd take a week to get to him. The governor was handing him his mail in his hand, but they was photocopying the letters. Apparently, according to the documentary, my letters to him, or his letters back to me, helped the police because they didn't have his handwriting, and they said there was very profound things in the handwriting, the way he spelt certain words, very pronounced with a P and stuff like that. So yeah, apparently indirectly I helped convict Stephen Port, but like I said, didn't go to court, wasn't asked to go to court, wouldn't have gone to court. I don't get involved, I don't speak to the police, serial killer case or not. I don't get involved with stuff like that. I don't speak to the police. But yeah, my letters and my correspondence apparently helped the police indirectly nail Stephen Port, the grinder killer. Like I said, there's too many to mention. I've wrote to vast amounts of people. Sometimes they'll reply, other times they won't. It's one of them. You've got to think. Some of them love it and they revel in it, and they see themselves as infamous, and other people just think, hang on, what's your agenda, right? But we have an obsession with true crime, whether you're American, whether you're Australian, whether you're British. We definitely have an interest with true crime and why people commit these heinous crimes. And like I said, people were criticising me. People were like, Cody, we watched a documentary, but we'd never write to the sick fuck. But you'd watch a documentary about his crimes. I just go one step further in typical Cody fashion and write to these individuals. But I'm the sick one. I didn't commit these crimes. I don't vindicate these crimes. I don't support these crimes. I'm just interested in the mindset of these individuals. I wrote to American serial killer. Well, he wasn't a serial killer. One of the Orion Brotherhood, guy called Tom Silverstein. The one prisoner that I would have loved to have heard back from was Robert Maudsley. For those that don't know, Robert Maudsley is probably the most dangerous prisoner. Well, he's being classed as the most dangerous prisoner in the UK prison system. Robert Maudsley was abused from a very young age in a kid's home, from what I remember. And Robert Maudsley he was hitchhiking, and a lorry driver was a nonce, and he was telling him about all these noncy things he did to kids, and Robert Maudsley killed him. And when he was in prison, he went on to murder 2 more paedophiles. And apparently in one case, it's been disputed, but apparently he broke the inmate's skull open, and he walked into ate some of his brain, walked into the office, into the Screws office, and said, at the next roll count, you're going to be 1 down. And he walked into the cell and apparently found a spoon sticking out of a prisoner's cranium with some of the brain missing. That led on to the nickname Hannibal the Cannibal. Again, it's been disputed, but there's no smoke without fire. He also went on to kill another prisoner as well whilst he was in prison. So Hannibal the Cannibal, or Robert Maudsley, was the original paedophile hunter for me, really was. And he's languishing in the dungeons at Wakefield Prison, Monster Mansion. He's in a glass. It's not like a cage door. It's like a fucking, like, you know when you go to the zoo and you've got the thick glass. He's behind 2 lots of glass, thick glass. His furniture is all made out of compressed cardboard. And yeah, he used to be down there with Charlie Bronson, and him and Charlie had a bit of a fallout. I think Charlie tried to give a watch to Robert Maudsley, or as he knew him, Bobby, and Bobby said no. And him and Charlie got into a bit of a spat, obviously not physically because they can't get to each other, but they was both down, held in segregation, away from everybody, in these specially constructed cells. And Charlie used to shout threats to Robert Maudsley, I'm going to kill you, I'm going to do this to you, I'm going to do that to you. So yeah, I've wrote to quite a few of them, and a handful have written back. I've wrote to other lesser profile prisoners as well, but sick crimes as well. And again, don't mean I support these people, just means I've got an interest in why they do what they do. Anyway, guys, if you Google, like I said, well, not Google, sorry. If you search in YouTube, Cody Lachey, Ian Brady, Cody Lachey, Mairead Philpott, or Cody Lachey, Philpott, Cody Lachey, Stephen Port, the documentary will come up, the letters will come up, and you can listen to me talking about them and showing the letters off and stuff. It's not for everyone, this video, I understand that, but let me know what you think, guys. Like, comment, subscribe. Cody out.